Hello and welcome to Todd Talk, where insight meets inspiration. I'm your host, Todd Hiller, and I'm an author, speaker, and longtime community leader, here to guide you on a journey towards fulfillment and balance. In every episode, we'll explore ways to fill life's emptiness, helping you uncover practical tools to create harmony, purpose, and happiness. Whether it's thriving in your career, nurturing personal growth, or simply finding joy in the everyday, Todd Talk is your space for real conversations and actionable advice. So let's thrive together, personally, professionally, and beyond. This is Todd Talk, and I'm thrilled to have you here.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Todd Talk. I know, it's a strange title for this one, but trust me, this one's got some bite, or maybe some clip. So if you didn't read the title beforehand, this is called Cut Your Toenails Before They Hurt, and here's the idea. Today's episode is about the little things we avoid that end up becoming big discomforts, and how cutting your toenails might just be the best life advice you didn't know you needed. Okay, so when I was a kid, I was always so busy playing. I didn't want to stop to take a break, to do anything. I didn't want to give up my time outside. I wanted to just go, and keep on playing. And I was growing fast like a weed. I was a fast-growing kid, and so my clothes, it was nothing out of the ordinary for my clothes to get too small too soon, and that included shoes. But one day, I was playing, and I noticed, I said, man, my shoes hurt, and they feel tight, and my toes feel weird. So I went and told my mom, and I said, listen, I don't know what's wrong. So she said, well, take your shoe off. Let's look. Maybe there's something stuck in there. Or maybe there's something wrong with your shoe, or your socks messed up, or whatever. So I take my shoes and socks off, and she looks at me, and she's like, kid. Well, she called me Ziggy. Zig, that was my nickname, still is. She said, Ziggy, cut your toenails before they hurt. And, I didn't want to do that. I was stubborn. I didn't want to do that chore because it took too much time. I wanted to go. And by the time I had to take a shower and go to bed at night as a little kid, I just wanted to just fall into bed because I was tired from playing all day and having a busy day. But the idea here is that my mom was right. Again. So here's the thing. Toenail pain, I know it's funny, and I know it's a strange metaphor and a bit quirky, but that pain that I experienced, it didn't come all at once. It crept in little by little, just like consequences do. So let's zoom out a little bit. The theme here is that we often ignore little tasks or habits that would prevent discomfort in our own lives, but so often we just blatantly ignore them. Sometimes we don't check in on our mental health until we spiral out of control and we feel burned out or depleted or worn out or just like we're going to break and blow up, and we have to say, oh boy, I guess I need a break now. But we let it get so far past the center point and so far past the tipping point that we just crashed over the cliff of whatever it was, of burnout, of anger, of frustration, because we didn't check in with ourselves. Another big one here is with communication. How often have you, and I know I've done this a lot, how often have you avoided the awkward conversation, and you avoided it so long that it becomes an argument? What could have been probably a 2 or 3 minute conversation that, yes, might have been a little bit awkward and might have been uncomfortable, and there might have been a lot of ums and ahs and, well, wait, I want to make sure you know what I mean, and back and forth. As awkward as it might be, if you wait long enough and you let it grow so big, it's going to become an argument. And it didn't have to be, but because, again, we ignored those consequences and we let the, quote-unquote, let the toenail grow, we just let something small evolve into something a lot bigger. And we can relate this, like I said, to a lot of things. Neglecting our finances until our bills pile up and we don't know which way to turn because we're worried we're going to be broke. Not stretching after working out, or not resting after going to the gym or working out or running until your body just gives up and says, nope, can't do it. Your back gets blown out. You pull a muscle, whatever it happens to be. And for me, this in my adult life, when I was a kid, it was the toenails. But in my adult life, it was saying yes to everything that people asked me to do, until burnout started knocking. And then even when I kept saying yes, burnout just eventually kicked down the door and let itself in and said, hi, I'm here to stay now. You have no choice but to deal with me. And even little things like skipping water, drinking water, and wondering why you're cranky and foggy and kind of don't feel like yourself. This whole list, all those things are just grown-up versions of, letting your toenails get too long, so to speak. So let's frame this a couple different ways. So I want you to ask yourself, what's been quietly nagging at you lately? What's been that little thing in the back of your head that you've been saying, oh, I have to do this, or this has been on my mind or on my plate, but I keep pushing it off my plate because I'm too busy. And when you realize what it is, when you think of it, then ask yourself, what small action, what little thing could I do today to prevent discomfort tomorrow? And it doesn't always have to be solving the whole problem. Sometimes it can be doing one little thing today with that thing that's been nagging at you in the back of your brain quietly, but it's still there nonetheless. It can be one little thing to let yourself take one step towards it not nagging at you anymore. And like I said, it doesn't have to make it go away all at once or all at the same time, but it can be one step towards fixing it, even if it's just a little bit. And also ask yourself, what have I been avoiding that I actually have the power to address? And this was something I started doing a whole bunch of years ago, and it literally changed the flow of my whole day. You know, I'm always someone who's been busy, and I have been able to be fairly productive in lots of different things, and I've been involved in lots of different things. But a whole bunch of years ago, I started telling myself, if you can do it in less than like 3 or 5 minutes, just do it right then. Don't say I'll do it later. And this got me to do lots of things. It got me better at cleaning. It got me better at organizing. It got me better at doing outdoor chores. It got me even things like weed whacking my yard. I used to say, well, I'll just mow the lawn and I'll do that later. But I'm like, well, in the grand scheme of things, how long does it really take you to do the string trimming and the weed whacking first and then just jump on the mower and mow? And it's little things like this that has allowed me to make time for bigger things that take longer, because I don't have this big nagging list of all these things piled up that I say, oh, I'll get to that someday, or I have to do this, or I have to do this. Because we all know, I'm sure as you're listening right now, in your head, you're running through this thing. You're like, yeah, I don't just have one thing, Todd. I have a whole list of things that are quietly nagging at me in the back of my brain. And I understand. I've been there. It's human to do so. We are all busy people with lots going on in our lives. So sometimes the nagging things just pile up without us noticing. And so if that list exists, and I think for most people it does, you know, do those little things you can. Make those little changes. If it takes less than 3 or 5 minutes, just do it right then. If you have 3 or 5 minutes to spare, just get it out of the way, because that will do a couple things. One, it will make you feel good and make you feel productive, and that will lead to you being able to do more things because you'll be in that productive mindset and that productive mood. And listen, if it's on the side of self-care stuff, we all have this nagging list. It's always going to be there. If you're an adult in this world, basically we're all going to have to-do lists forever. That's just kind of the way things work. But balancing the to-do list with the things you like to do or the things that are good for you is really important. So please take the walk, schedule the checkup with the doctor, pack yourself the lunch you wanted that day a whole lot, say no when you are already stretched way too thin and people keep asking for things. Talk to someone, have the awkward conversation before it blows up and becomes an argument. Do those little things for yourself, because being proactive doesn't mean being perfect. It just means you're being aware enough to clip the discomfort before it digs in. You like what I did there? And as far as always having things to do, if you guys have been listening for a while or followed me on social media, I've been on this journey kind of backwards or backing out of being burned out and worn out and depleted and always saying yes to everything and being overcommitted. And a lot of the things that I have learned in doing that is that there is time to do the things you want to do. And there is time to do the things you feel good while you're doing, like taking the walk or going for a run or drinking your water or stretching or yoga or whatever it is. There is time to do those things. But that time comes when you realize that you only have so much time in your day or your week or your month, and only have so much time in your life, both on the grand scale and the minute scale. We only have so much time to do the things we are asked to do or required to do, and the things we enjoy and want to do in any given space. So you have to make sure that you are not giving all that time and energy and filling all that space with things that are just the quote-unquote I have to do's. You have to leave room for the things you want to do and the things that make you feel filled up and happy and wholesome and able to have energy to give back to other people. And again, this also comes in the shortwave form. I said, I kind of have this rule: if it takes less than 3 or 5 minutes, just do it right then. If there's something you can do for yourself that's only going to take 5 or 10 minutes, do it. If you want to go outside for 10 minutes and wander through your garden, or you want to go outside for 10 minutes and just have a cup of coffee and sit in the fresh air and listen to the birds. If you want to go for a 10-minute walk, make sure you remember that you can do those things too, because a lot of times we pile up and we think, our brains trick us, and they say, oh, I'd love to go for a walk. You say, oh, you don't have time to go for a walk today. You've got a meeting now, and you've got to bring the kids here then, and you got to do this and do this and do this. But in the reality of things, you say, well, right now, I don't have to leave for wherever I'm going for the next 35 minutes. I could take a 10-minute walk and then give myself 25 minutes to get ready. I can do that. But I think our brains run in overdrive so often, we forget sometimes how short little things can be beneficial too. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour nap. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour kayak trip. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour yoga session. You can do little things in 10 or 15-minute increments that give you a little boost of energy, a little boost of serotonin, a little bit of a boost to make you feel happy and better about your day. And that will lead you down the path of being able to do more things that you feel good about and more things that make you happy. And it will just help balance your day so you're not feeling like it's just this landslide of energy going the direction you don't want it to go. Because with those little things, those little things are the things we always file under the, I'll get to it later category. And here's the problem. Later often means after it starts to become annoying or nagging or after it starts to hurt, just like the toenail did when I was a kid. So think about this now. You've got a friend, a partner, a coworker, someone or something in your life that's been bugging you. There might be some resentment. There might be something that didn't sit right. And instead of bringing it up, you swallow it and you file it under the quote-unquote not a big deal in your brain. But what happens when we do that is just the starting point. We've planted the seed for something to have the chance to grow into something bigger. Because if you have the awkward conversation up front, or if you deal with the issue with your child or your coworker or your friend or your spouse or your relative or whatever it is up front, and you get rid of it, it doesn't have a chance to grow because you've taken it away. You've taken away its chance to become anything bigger. But if you don't, and you put it in that it's not a big deal category in the back of your brain, that's how it starts. And eventually it pushes up against the edges of your emotional shoe, so to speak. And now every step you take with them, or in that situation, feels so uncomfortable, all because we didn't trim, quote unquote, we didn't cut the issue out right in the beginning with an honest conversation and dealing with it. We just let it grow and get too big, and now it's become super uncomfortable. And, I related this, the toenail story, is kind of quirky and kind of funny, but, I've just related it kind of in the past handful of minutes to emotional things. But let's be serious. We can also do things to our bodies that end up bringing us to a bad place when it comes to physical things, right? How many of us wait until our backs are sore because we've done too much and before we actually address the problem and stretch or go to the chiropractor? How many of us have let our stress boil over and just get so out of control that we just don't even know which way to turn? How many of us have given into such, I call it sleep debt, where you're sleeping not great 4 or 5 nights in a row, and instead of saying, I either need to go to bed earlier or find a way to get some sleep or take a nap or rest earlier or whatever it is, we just keep this pattern up and say, oh, I'll sleep eventually and hopefully it gets better. We don't just do this with emotional things in our lives. So, rest before you're exhausted. Move your body before you're injured. Stretch before it hurts. Drink water before the dehydration headache kicks in. We were making hay one year and I did not drink enough water and I kept telling myself, oh, I'll be fine. Instead of stopping the tractor and going to sit down for 10 minutes, like I said, in my brain, I'm like, we don't have 10 minutes. We got to get this hay in the barn, but in the grand scheme of things, we definitely had 10 minutes. I didn't drink any water, and then I ended up with heat stroke to the point where I brought myself home and climbed into my soaker tub in my master bathroom of cold water, and even that didn't bring my body temperature down because I was cooking from the inside out. I was boiling. I was so hot. But I wouldn't take 10 minutes to go drink a whole boatload of water and sit in the shade and let my body have a chance to cool itself off. I waited and pushed and pushed and pushed for another 3 or 4 hours until all the hay was done, and then I went home and said, well, now I have to fix the problem. And let me tell you, it took a lot longer than 10 minutes to fix it once the problem had already showed up. And we can relate all of this to every different category of our life, has a quote-unquote toenail. We talked about emotional, physical, there's mental toenails, there's spiritual toenails, there's all these kind of things in our lives that we let this happen with. And it's not because we're bad people. It's not because we're unaware. It's just because we are human and we're always trying to make sure that we're getting through the things we need to get through. And we're getting through the day and we're bringing our kids everywhere they need to be. And we're just, we've got to stay on it and in this race and make sure that we don't get behind. And unfortunately, when we adopt that mentality, sometimes we get so far behind in some categories that we don't have a way to struggle back out of them without a whole boatload of work. And mentally we do this too. We've got a project looming at work or a goal we keep putting off. We're like, oh man, I'll get to it someday. But then you realize that someday is going to become never. And so all of a sudden you realize that a task that took you 5 minutes when you finally did it has haunted you for 5 weeks or 5 months. And I recently heard this great story about a guy with a window in his basement, one of those little windows in the foundation in a basement window, like the high up little casement windows. And the story basically went that he wanted to sell it. They had a window break, and he kept saying, I'll fix it later, I'll fix it later, I'll fix it later. And then they had to end up selling their house. And all of a sudden later came right then because he had to fix it because they weren't able to sell the house without replacing the window. So he went down, sprayed some WD-40 on it, popped it out with a screwdriver, and he said it literally took him 5 minutes to change this thing that had bothered him for 5 or 6 years. And it was just a great story. We don't know sometimes how simple a fix it can be. We don't know sometimes that it's only going to be 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. We don't know sometimes that a 10-minute break can keep us from 5 or 6 hours of recovering from something like heat exhaustion like I had to go through that day. So you have to give yourself the time to do it because often we will be pleasantly surprised at how quick and easy, or even if it's not easy, how quick it is to fix. And on social media, I've put all kinds of graphics with just 2 words that say just start, and that's really one of the big basic principles here. Whether it's an email or a conversation or something you need to start or get going or a project, just start it. Just start right then and then let the rest happen. Because once you have started, the momentum of starting will make the rest of the things start to happen, and then you can keep walking and working through them without getting all worried and bound up and backwards and just standing still and saying, well, I'm going to do this someday. And this can be on a spiritual level too. And I don't mean religion, so just hang with me here for a second. But if you're living out of sync with the things you value and you're living out of sync with the things that you find meaningful and the core beliefs that you hold as a person, you're going to start feeling out of touch or out of place or out of sync, and you just start to feel like something isn't right. So sometimes you need to pause and reflect and reconnect with what matters to you on kind of a deeper inner level and let yourself take the time to say, 10 minutes of doing this or 15 minutes of doing this in my life today will really make me feel more aligned with the person I want to be in the long run, or the person I want to be for my spouse, or the person I want my kids to look up to, or the type of employee I want to be, or whatever it is. Take the time to do that before you end up looking so far backwards that you say, oh, I remember setting that goal way back when, but it's far too late and far too gone to go after it now. And so this brings a big question up in my mind. When I was a kid, why didn't I clip my toenails when I was a kid? I didn't do it because I didn't want to. It wasn't because I didn't know I should. It's not like I was a 3-year-old at this point. I was old enough to know that you should trim your fingers, nails, and toenails. I was old enough to know better. But I didn't want to because it took up too much time in my 11-year-old brain that was going to take away from me playing. So the same is true with the things that we do to ourselves on all these different levels. Sometimes it's because we don't feel worthy of taking care of ourselves. We think that, other people matter more, or we don't have time for us. Sometimes we think that pushing through pain is some kind of badge of honor. And listen, I've gone up that hill to die too. Please don't misunderstand me and think that I'm perfect and this has never happened to me. I have 100% said I will push through the pain. I told the heat exhaustion story. That's one of many where I said, well, I'll rest later or I'll sleep when I'm dead, that kind of thing. And maybe, just maybe, we have grown so used to the pressure of things that we've forgotten what comfort even feels like. And this has been huge in my life because here's the truth. You're allowed to live a life that doesn't hurt. You're allowed to do the small things that keep you well and happy and smiling. And you don't need to wait until it gets worse to make it better. And this was a lesson I learned the hard way. So please hear me from when I say this. You don't have to wait until it gets worse to make it better. And you're allowed to live a life that doesn't hurt. I was living a life 3 or 4 years ago where I was so burned out, depleted, angry, stressed, frustrated, overwhelmed, overcommitted, take your pick of words, that I didn't know what to do. But that was my norm. I thought that's how life was supposed to go. And looking back at it now, it's so backwards to think that, like, why would you think that? Like, why would you think that your life should be so dedicated to other people and their goals and their objectives and their initiatives that you don't have any time for yourself? And is it because I'm unintelligent? No, I'm a pretty intelligent person. Is it because I'm unaware of what it looks like to be happy? Nope, I'm a very happy person as well. But this version of life, that version of life with me was what I thought was normal. And I was waiting until it got worse to make it better. I kept saying, oh, I'm okay now. No, I'm okay. I'm okay going to meetings almost every single night of the week. I'm okay with having 12 different commitments every single month that I have to go to, even though there's only 30 days in a month. I'm okay, and that didn't include things like my day job, by the way. I'm okay with it being this way. When it gets worse, I'll change something. And that is such a foolish mentality. And it doesn't make you a bad person if you're living that right now. It doesn't make you a bad person if that's what you're going through or living through. I'm not a bad person. I'm a pretty good guy. But I ended up in a place where I was so out of touch with what it meant to be living a life that didn't hurt and wasn't frustrating and stressful that I couldn't see where I had come from because it happened slowly. Just like the growth when I was a little kid of that little toenail. When I was an adult, it crept in slowly. I said yes to things little by little. They didn't all show up at me one day and say, here, take all these 12 different commitments on, yes or no. And I raised my right hand and said, yes, please. It happened little by little. And I know it happens little by little in your lives too. So as we close, I want to leave you with something. Today, I'm giving you permission and a reminder. Go take care of one tiny thing that you've been avoiding. One life toenail that needs to be clipped. Send the text message. Have the conversation. Apologize if you need to. Set the boundary, get the oil change, drink the water, say no, say yes, whatever it is, but do it before it hurts and before it becomes uncomfortable. You owe it to yourself to have good days. And please don't misunderstand me. I know full well that not every day is a good day. I get it. 100% understand that bad days happen and bad things will happen. But there is good in every day. So don't wait until it gets bad and don't wait until it hurts before you change it or take some kind of action and some kind of step forward to make things better in your life. It's your life to enjoy. It's not someone else's life to control or ruin. I have said that before numerous times, and I mean it. And I want you to give yourself permission to do that today, and I'm going to give you the permission to do that today as well, because I don't want you to live from day to day wondering what it feels like to be happy like you used to be. Because prevention isn't just practical, it's powerful. Prevent yourself from getting so burned out, tired, depleted, stressed, frustrated, overwhelmed, sore, whatever it is. Prevent that from happening before it gets to be too late and everything about your day hurts. It's just one of the most loving things you can do for your future self, and it's really, really important to do that. You owe it to you to do the things you can to make your day as good and happy and bright as possible. If this episode hit home, please share it with a friend or maybe someone who's been limping through life lately and needs a little laugh or a little light or a little quirky story about this podcast guy you know who all of a sudden started talking about his toenails one day. And if you have your own toenail story, let me know. Reach out. I'd love to hear from you if you want to share. Find me on Instagram. Find me on TikTok. Find me on LinkedIn. You can find me all different ways on social media, but please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Please remember to take care of yourselves out there. Live your life comfortably or as comfortably as you can. And whatever you do, never ever think that you are not worthy of having happy and comfortable days. Be well, my friends. As always, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for tuning in to Todd Talk. If you've liked what you've heard, please go ahead and subscribe and follow along so you don't miss any updates or new episodes. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.